Just 1 year ago, I couldn't even climb 3 steps without feeling as if someone was tightening a screw around my knees. The pain was so intense that I began avoiding stairs, long walks, even getting off the sofa without support. I felt like every day I was drifting further away from the life I once enjoyed. I am 84 years old. Back in my day, I was a very active person. I walked every day, tended the garden, went to the market, cooked for my family. I didn't like depending on anyone. But little by little, that dull, constant pain crept into my daily life like a shadow. It took away my spirit, my energy, and above all, my independence. I went to doctors. They told me it was normal for my age. They prescribed painkillers, creams, exercises that only left me sorer. Every week I tried something new, hoping it would be the remedy. But nothing changed. Until one day, almost by chance, I overheard a conversation between 2 older women in the waiting room of the clinic. One said to the other, "Since I started taking my homemade collagen, I haven't complained about my knees again." At first it sounded like nonsense to me. Could a home remedy really do what doctors and medicines hadn't? But I decided to try it. I didn't have much to lose and everything to gain. Today, 1 year later, I can tell you something that moves me deeply. My knees no longer hurt when I climb stairs. In just 7 days, I started to notice a real difference. And in less than a month, my body began to move as if it had turned back a decade. All thanks to a simple, natural, homemade mixture. And that is what I want to share with you today. Not just the recipe, but everything I learned about the body, health, and what we really need after 70. Because old age doesn't have to hurt. Sometimes the only thing missing is the right information and the willingness to try something new. But before continuing, I would love to hear from you. How old are you? Which country are you watching me from? Tell me in the comments. It fills me with joy to see this community growing with wise, strong people willing to take better care of themselves every day. Let's begin. Nag. For a long time, pain was my everyday companion. It started as soon as I opened my eyes. When I tried to get out of bed, I felt an uncomfortable pull in my right knee. When I stood up, both knees creaked, as if protesting the mere act of moving. At first I thought it was just morning stiffness, but that stiffness never went away. It followed me with every step I took. Climbing stairs became a nightmare. I remember one morning trying to go up to the 2nd floor of my daughter's house. I got stuck on the 3rd step. I felt like my knee was going to collapse. I grabbed the handrail tightly, closed my eyes, and took a deep breath. I was ashamed. She looked at me worried, but also with that expression of someone beginning to see her father as fragile. I said nothing, but inside, something broke. Walking, which used to be my way to clear my mind, turned into a punishment. 10, 15 minutes, and I already felt a sharp pain on the inside of my knee. The pain wasn't just physical. It made me feel trapped inside my own body. I couldn't bend down to pick something up from the floor without first calculating how I would get back up. Sometimes I avoided drinking much water so I wouldn't have to go to the bathroom so often. And if I dropped something in the kitchen, well, if it wasn't very important, I just left it there. The hardest part was beginning to feel like a burden. I depended more and more on others. To do the shopping, I needed help. To go out, someone had to accompany me in case my leg failed. Sometimes, even to get up from the sofa, I would look around to see if someone was near to lend me a hand. And that was not me. I had always been strong. I was always the one helping others, not the other way around. The doctors didn't offer much comfort. One looked me in the eyes and said, "It's normal. It's wear and tear from age. You have to get used to it." He said it in a neutral, almost mechanical tone, as if it wasn't worth trying anything else, as if all that was left for me was to resign myself. And that hurt me more than any stabbing pain in the knee. I remember that night lying awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about those words. You have to get used to it. Get used to what? Living with pain? Giving up my independence? Becoming a spectator of my own life? I asked myself something I hadn't dared to say aloud until then. Is this what old age becomes? A series of resignations? A slow process of saying goodbye to everything you loved doing? And just when I felt there was no way out, an unexpected door appeared. But before opening it, let me show you how I got there. Doug. I remember exactly the moment I hit rock bottom. It was a Thursday afternoon. I had gone for a walk in the park with my grandson, as I did every week. But this time I didn't make it halfway through the route. After only 10 minutes, the pain in my left knee forced me to stop. I tried to hide it, to smile at the child, but he looked at me with that mix of concern and tenderness only children have. "Are you okay, Grandpa?" he asked me. And it was that simple phrase that shook me inside. I told him yes. I just needed to sit for a moment. We sat on a nearby bench. He stayed silently by my side, watching the pigeons. I, however, had my gaze fixed on my own knees. I felt defeated. Silently inside, I kept telling myself, this isn't right. I can't go on like this. I don't want to be a grandpa who can't play, walk, enjoy. I don't want to be a broken old man. When we got home, I locked myself in my room. I took off my shoes, sat on the edge of the bed, and I couldn't help it. I started to cry. Not because of the physical pain, but because of what it represented. Because of the feeling of being trapped in a body that no longer responded. For feeling less. For thinking that maybe it was all over for me. Thoughts crossed my mind that I never would have imagined years ago. Resignation had crept into my mind like a silent dampness. That night I slept poorly. I woke up several times, my leg cramped, my mind foggy. The next morning, I didn't even feel like having breakfast. I thought about cancelling a visit I had planned with a friend from the neighborhood, an older woman who had also experienced chronic pain. But something told me to go. I needed to talk, even if it was about anything. When I arrived at her house, she greeted me with a smile. Seeing me limp, she frowned. "Knee again?" she asked. I nodded, not really wanting to explain much. We sat in her small garden, surrounded by medicinal plants she grew herself. She always said that medicine was in the earth, but honestly, I had never paid much attention. She watched me silently for a moment. Then she said something that marked a before and after. "What if you try making it yourself?" I laughed, more out of reflex than conviction. "Make what?" I asked. "Your own treatment. Stop waiting for doctors to give you a magic solution. Listen to your body. Use what nature gives you. Take responsibility for your well-being. Make your own medicine." I don't know why, but those words stuck with me. She repeated that she had fought her pain with a mixture of ingredients she had in her kitchen. No strange formulas, no impossible-to-find things, just what our grandparents already knew. I left her house with a mix of skepticism and curiosity. That same afternoon, I opened a notebook and wrote, "I'm going to try it. For me, for my grandson, for everything I still want to live without pain." That's when everything started to change. Not with a pill, not with surgery, but with a decision. One that would change my life forever. Tag. Before telling you exactly how I prepared my homemade recipe, I want to explain something I discovered almost by accident, but that completely changed the way I understood the pain in my knees. It's about collagen. Collagen is an essential protein in our body. In fact, it's the most abundant. It's in bones, skin, muscles, tendons, and especially in our joints. Imagine collagen as a natural glue. It binds, supports, and protects. It's like that cushion that prevents bones from rubbing against each other when we walk, climb stairs, or even just stand. When we have enough collagen, our joints feel agile, smooth. They don't creak, don't hurt, don't inflame easily. We get up without stiffness. We walk without fear. We sleep without feeling that uncomfortable pulse in our knees or hips. But here's the problem. With age, we produce less and less collagen. Starting at 30 years old, the body naturally begins to produce less collagen, and after 50, that decline accelerates. By the time we reach 70 or 80, many of us produce only a fraction of what we did when we were young. And you can tell. Oh, you can tell. Do you know what makes it even worse? 3 things many of us ignore. First, poor nutrition. A diet rich in sugars, refined flours, ultra-processed foods, or fried foods not only fails to provide collagen, but destroys it faster. Second, lack of movement. When we don't use our joints, the body assumes it doesn't need them so much. And what does it do? It stops investing in keeping them strong and protected. That simple. And third, constant stress, which produces cortisol. This hormone, when kept elevated for a long time, also degrades collagen in the body. It's as if our nerves not only steal our calm, but also the health of our joints. Now, how can you tell if you are losing collagen? There are several signs, some very obvious. Pain and stiffness in joints, especially knees, shoulders, and hips. Greater difficulty moving after sitting for long periods. Looser, less elastic skin. Nails that break easily. Hair that is thinner, dry, or falls out more often. And in some cases, joint creaking when moving. It's sad that many of us are told this is normal, that it's simply age. And worse, that we are convinced the only way to regain lost collagen is through expensive pills, imported treatments, or hard-to-afford supplements. That's one of the big myths. The truth is that our body can produce collagen on its own, even after 80. It just needs the right ingredients. The right combination of certain amino acids, vitamins, and minerals can reactivate that internal factory that seemed turned off. And that was exactly what my homemade recipe did. No laboratory supplements, no pills impossible to swallow, no spending a fortune on miracle products. Just natural, accessible ingredients, and most importantly, effective ones. Now that you know why collagen is so vital and why we lose it over time, you're ready to learn the mixture that transformed my knees and gave me back the freedom to move without pain. After that conversation in the garden with my friend, I went home with an idea spinning in my head. What if I could create something myself to help me heal? Not pills, not industrial formulas, something natural, something real. The first thing I did was what many do. Go to a pharmacy. I asked for a collagen supplement. They showed me several options. All had colorful labels, promises of quick results, and prices. That made me tremble. Some jars cost more than my entire monthly grocery bill. But that wasn't the worst part. When I took one jar and read the ingredients, I found a list that looked more like a laboratory inventory than a kitchen recipe. Preservatives, colorants, artificial sweeteners, and unpronounceable names. Many of those ingredients I didn't even know what they were. Others I had heard about in reports warning of their negative health effects. Still, I bought one. I hoped it would work. But after 3 weeks of taking it every morning, I felt no change. My knees still hurt the same. My wallet was emptier, and my confidence more worn out. That's when I said, enough. This can't be the only option. Then I remembered something very special. My grandmother's recipes. She didn't have laboratories, nor doctors around the corner, but she knew how to use kitchen ingredients as medicine. Bone broths, infusions, homemade creams, poultices. Sometimes it seemed like witchcraft, but it worked. And it wasn't magic. It was ancestral wisdom. That night I sat with a notebook and began researching. I read articles, talked to acquaintances, watched videos, consulted old cookbooks and natural remedy guides. I discovered that many ingredients that help our body produce collagen don't come from a capsule, but from foods we have always had at hand. Bones, chicken skin, citrus fruits, natural gelatins, seeds, spices. Everything made sense. Collagen doesn't need to be imported or manufactured in an industrial plant. It can be prepared at home with patience, care, and the right ingredients. That's how my recipe was born. Not out of pure distrust, but out of disappointment. from seeing that what they sold me didn't help, from wanting to regain control of my body without depending on what others said I should take. And it was also an act of self-love, because after so many years caring for others, I decided to care for myself, with my own hands, with what I had in my kitchen. That's how my path to relief, to recovery began. Now yes, the moment has come to share my homemade collagen recipe, the very one that gave me back mobility and eased the pain in my knees in just 1 week. This recipe has no magical or hard-to-find secrets. Everything you need, you probably already have at home or can easily get at the market or supermarket. Main ingredients: 1 kilogram of beef bones, preferably with some cartilage or marrow. Bones from the spine, knee or ribs are excellent. 1 tablespoon of turmeric powder. Juice of 2 large fresh lemons. A small piece of fresh ginger, optional but recommended. 2 garlic cloves. 1 sprig of fresh parsley. Sea salt to taste. Enough water to cover the bones. Optional. 1 teaspoon of apple cider vinegar. Helps extract minerals from the bones. Preparation step by step. Step 1. Cleaning and initial boiling. Place the bones in a large pot and cover them with cold water. Bring to a boil and let them boil for about 15 minutes. You'll see foam form on the surface. That's impurities. Remove the bones, discard that water, and rinse them lightly. This will make your broth much cleaner and more pleasant to taste. Step 2. Slow, prolonged cooking. Put the bones back in the pot, this time with fresh water to cover them completely. Add the turmeric, ginger, garlic cloves, parsley, lemon juice, and if you want, the apple cider vinegar. Also add a pinch of salt. Bring to low heat and cook for at least 8 hours. Ideally, between 12 and 24 hours, if you can use a slow cooker or do it in 2 sessions. The longer you cook it, the more collagen will be extracted from the bones. Step 3. Straining and storage. Once the broth is ready, strain it well to remove bones and residues. Store the liquid in glass jars. When cooled, you'll notice the broth becomes thick, almost gelatinous. That's natural collagen. You can keep it in the fridge for up to 5 days or freeze it in portions if you prefer to store it longer. How to take it? I drank 1 hot cup every morning on an empty stomach, like tea. You can add a splash of lemon or a little more turmeric when serving. You can also use it as a base for soups or rice. But if you drink it alone and on an empty stomach, its effect is more direct and powerful. What if you don't eat meat? For those who are vegetarian or vegan, there's an alternative based on flavorless vegetable gelatin, agar-agar, seeds rich in proteins and essential nutrients for collagen production, such as chia and flax seeds soaked beforehand. Vegetable gelatin with citrus juice, lemon, orange, grapefruit. Nettle or horsetail infusion, rich in silica. Avocado, nuts and sunflower seeds to provide good fats and vitamin E. It's not direct collagen like the one extracted from bones, but it does help activate collagen production from within if accompanied by a good diet and daily movement. Extra tip: avoid reheating the broth many times. If possible, heat only the portion you will drink. You can also add it to your morning smoothie or drink it at room temperature. This recipe is not miraculous. It's not immediate. But if you do it with consistency, patience, and self-love, as I did, you will see real changes. Not only in your knees, also in your skin, nails, digestion, and daily energy. Oh, the first day I had my collagen broth ready, I looked at it with some distrust. It was something new, made by myself, with ingredients I knew, but without knowing if it would really work. Still, I heated a cup, sat in the kitchen, and drank it slowly, like a ritual. It was thick, golden, with a gentle aroma of ginger and turmeric. I was surprised it didn't taste bad. In fact, it comforted me. It made me feel cared for. That morning I noticed no change, of course, but I took it the next day and the next, and so I continued. It was on the third day that I started to notice something strange, something good. That morning I woke up and, trying to get out of bed, the stiffness in my knees wasn't as intense as usual. Normally I had to stay seated a few minutes before I could stand, but that time I did it almost immediately. Not without discomfort, but without the usual creaking or burning. I stopped in my tracks. I thought, is this it? So soon? I didn't want to get excited. I told myself maybe I had slept better, or it was a coincidence. But it wasn't. Throughout that day, I noticed less swelling in my legs. I felt lighter. My digestion was also different. Less heaviness after eating, less gas, more regularity. And something curious. I had more energy, as if my batteries had been changed. I, who had been dragging my feet around the house for months, that day dared to take a short walk around the block. With a cane, but I did it. When I got back, I sat on the sofa with a smile. I felt different. I felt more like myself. But what finally convinced me was the 7th day. That day, as the sun rose, I put on my sneakers, opened the door, and walked. First to the garden, then to the end of the street. Without a cane, without pain. It wasn't a long or fast walk, but it was the first in a long time that I did with confidence, without the constant fear that my knees would give out or that a wrong step would leave me on the floor. It was like being free again, even if just for a few minutes. I came home with teary eyes, not from sadness, from gratitude, because after so many creams, medications, and doctor visits, a recipe made with my own hands was giving me back something I thought lost. Hope. And no, it wasn't magic. It was logic. It was consistency. It was the decision to take control, to try what nature and popular knowledge have always given us. It wasn't a miracle. It was a mixture of patience, commitment, and small daily gestures. And that is, perhaps, the most powerful lesson this experience gave me. One of the most striking things I discovered in this process was something no one had clearly told me. The body after 70 is not broken. It's malnourished. For years I thought what was happening to me was simply age. Doctors, friends, even myself repeated it. It's normal, they said. It's just how it is. As if reaching a certain age meant accepting pain, stiffness, fatigue. But they were wrong. We all were. I understood the first time I noticed my knees no longer hurt going downstairs. It wasn't just physical relief. It was a deep understanding that my body, even at 84, was still responsive, that it still wanted to move, that it could still heal. It just lacked the right resources. I began reading, researching, listening to older people who had recovered their quality of life with small changes. And then a truth hit me like a rock. We're not old. We're dehydrated of nutrients. The human body is a wise machine. And while it's true that over time we produce less collagen, less elastin, fewer digestive enzymes, that doesn't mean we're done. It means we have to feed it differently, more intelligently, more focused. For years I ate the same without thinking. Bread, rice, some meat, coffee. But no one taught me to nourish myself to age with dignity. Now I see it with different eyes. Collagen isn't a luxury, nor a trend. It's the raw material that keeps our joints, skin, muscles, and even our digestive system. It's not just about beauty, it's about functionality. And I also learned that movement is an inseparable ally. At first I thought, when it hurts less, I'll go walk. But it was the opposite. When I started moving, the pain began to disappear. The body needs to know you still need it, that it has reasons to keep working. Today I understand that it's not about living as if I were 40. It's about living as someone 84 who has learned to care for their body with love, patience, and respect. I stopped saying I'm old. Now I say, I'm in active maintenance. Because as long as I breathe, as long as I walk, as long as I think, there is life. And as long as there is life, it can always improve.
Jay,
One of the most important things I did to make this recipe work was to turn it into a daily ritual. Not as an obligation, but as a gift I gave myself every morning. I started taking it on an empty stomach as soon as I woke up. I prepared a hot cup of the collagen broth I had made the night before, sat calmly in the kitchen, without distractions, and drank it slowly. It wasn't just for the physical benefit. It was a moment of connection with myself, as if I was telling my body, here's what you need to keep going. I noticed that taking it on an empty stomach helped my stomach absorb it better, without interference from other foods. Soon, I began adding a few drops of fresh lemon juice to enhance collagen absorption, thanks to vitamin C. I also started adding, once a week, a pinch of black pepper with turmeric to activate its natural anti-inflammatory effect. Something fundamental was understanding that it wasn't enough just what I took, but also what I avoided. I reduced foods that cause inflammation, like refined sugars, fried foods, or processed cold cuts. I didn't eliminate them completely, but saved them for special occasions. Because I discovered collagen helps, but it needs a clean terrain to work. And of course, movement was key. At first, I could barely do a few gentle stretches upon waking, but little by little, with less pain and more spirit, I began taking short daily walks. First inside the house, then in the garden, then around the block. Walks of 10-15 minutes, breathing calmly, enjoying the air and the sun on my skin. Sometimes I did small stretching exercises with a chair or in bed, lifting legs, rotating ankles, moving shoulders. Simple things, but that kept my body awake. The hardest part wasn't starting, but maintaining consistency. And for that, I did something very simple. I put a sheet on the fridge with the days of the week and a box to check every time I took the collagen. That small daily action became a routine, like brushing my teeth or drinking water. And every time I felt tempted to quit, I told myself, if you've come this far, why give up now? The key was understanding this wasn't a magic cure. It was a commitment to myself, a new way of treating my body, listening to it, giving it what it needs. And over time, it not only became part of my routine, it became part of my life. Upon completing the first month taking the recipe every morning, I already noticed small daily miracles. What at first seemed like a simple improvement in my knees began to spread to my whole body. I could move more freely. My steps were firmer. Getting out of bed, I no longer felt that stiffness that made me sit for a few minutes. It was as if my body was waking up along with me. One afternoon, I went to the market without a cane. It wasn't something I planned. I just went out and realized I didn't need it. It was an indescribable feeling, not just from the pride of walking unaided, but from the freedom I felt with every step. As if my body was telling me, see, you just needed a little care. After 3 months, something I didn't expect happened. My doctor was surprised. He gave me a general checkup, and after seeing my tests and checking my mobility, he just said one sentence, "What you're doing, keep doing it." That day, I not only felt validated, I felt powerful, as if I had regained the helm of my health. It was no longer just a recipe, it was a lifestyle. And for the first time in years, I stopped expecting something to be wrong. I started trusting my body again. But the change wasn't just physical, it was emotional. With less pain, my mood improved. I got up eager, felt lighter. I laughed more. Even my grandchildren noticed. One day, my 8-year-old granddaughter told me, "Grandpa, you're not grumpy anymore." And she was right. Pain changes you, consumes you. When it disappears, you recover pieces of yourself you had forgotten. 6 months passed. It was no longer just walking without pain. It was climbing stairs effortlessly, playing with the children, bending down in the garden, dancing a little with my wife in the kitchen while an old song played. Simple things, but that once seemed impossible. Even my face changed. I looked in the mirror and saw less tiredness. My skin, though wrinkled, had a different glow, more color, more life. My friends asked me what I was doing, And when I told them, some laughed, until they tried it and came back weeks later, grateful. My energy level increased so much that I resumed things I had left behind. I started reading every afternoon again, writing in my journal, calling old friends just to chat. I regained relationships pain had interrupted. Because when one is tired and uncomfortable, one isolates. But when one feels good, one reconnects with the world. Today, after 6 months, I can say something I never thought I'd say at 84 years old. I feel like I'm 60. And no, it's not an exaggeration. I don't just mean the body, but the way I live every day. With hope, with movement, with presence. And to think all this started with a simple broth, with beef bones, turmeric, lemon, and consistency. The recipe wasn't miraculous. What was miraculous was believing my body could still improve. Since I started sharing this recipe with friends, neighbors, and even some followers who write to me on social media, there are certain questions that come up a lot. Today I want to answer them here, with the same honesty with which I've told my whole story. Is it good for any age? Yes. This recipe is not just for those over 70. In fact, the sooner you start, the better. Natural collagen is a protein our body produces abundantly when we're young, but from 30 or 40 on, its production begins to decline, which means both a young person with joint discomfort and an older person with advanced wear can benefit. The sooner you start nourishing your tissues, the better you'll reach old age. Is it safe for diabetics? Good question. Most of the ingredients in this recipe, like bone broth, lemon, turmeric, contain no added sugars nor cause blood sugar spikes. But as always, if you have type 1 or type 2 diabetes, it's best to check the ingredients with your primary care doctor. For example, if you decide to add any type of fruit or sweetener to the preparation, it's important to consider the glycemic index. In its basic form, the recipe is completely safe, but consulting is never a bad idea, especially if you're under strict treatment. What happens if you stop taking it? There are no adverse effects from stopping. It's not a medicine, it's food. But of course, if you stop nourishing your body, over time you'll notice. Just like when you stop exercising and lose condition, with collagen something similar happens. Your body can maintain itself for a while, but eventually pain, stiffness, or weakness may return. The key is consistency. It's not a temporary solution, but a long-term habit change. Can it be combined with medical treatments? Yes, and this is fundamental. This recipe does not replace any medical treatment. It's a complement, a natural support to help your body function better. If you're being treated for osteoarthritis, arthritis, osteoporosis, or any inflammatory condition, this recipe can help improve your quality of life, but you should never stop a treatment without talking to your doctor. In fact, when I started feeling better, the first thing I did was share it with my doctor, and he encouraged me to keep doing everything. How long does it take to see results? This varies from person to person. In my case, by the 3rd day, I felt less stiffness, and by the 7th day, I was walking without pain. But there are also people who take 2 weeks or even a month to notice changes. It all depends on the level of wear, general diet, rest, and physical activity. The important thing is not to get desperate. Results come. Consistency is the secret ingredient. And one more question I get all the time. Is it worth it? My answer is always the same: yes. 1,000 times yes. Because it's not just about the knees or the pain. It's about regaining freedom, the joy of moving without fear, without discomfort, of doing again the things we love. If you have more questions, leave them in the comments. I love reading and answering them. In the next part, I will share some testimonials from people who have also tried it and transformed their daily lives, just like I did. Tag. Looking back on this journey, I realized the most valuable thing I gained was not just mobility, not even the absence of pain. The most important thing was regaining trust in my body. That body many had written off for being over 80. That body that, with proper care, patience and consistency, proved it still had much to give. I learned that the body doesn't age all at once. It becomes malnourished, weakens when we stop listening to what it needs. But I also learned it can recover, even after decades. You don't need miracle medicine. Sometimes it all starts with a simple recipe and the courage to try something different. And most importantly, I understood you don't need luck. You need discipline. The discipline to prepare that broth every morning, even when you feel lazy. The discipline to keep walking a little every day, even if it hurts at first. The discipline to take care of yourself, not because you expect immediate results, but because you know your body deserves it. I know many people see the years as a sentence, as a stage of loss, of resignation. But it doesn't have to be that way. Age is not the end. It's just a new way of inhabiting the world. And if there's one thing my story has proven, it's that it's never too late to improve. If you're also tired of living with pain, if your knees, hips, or hands prevent you from moving freely, don't resign yourself. Try. Attempt. Take the first step. No one will do it for you, but you can do it for yourself. And don't keep this just for yourself. Maybe you have a father, a mother, a grandmother, a neighbor who lives with pain, believing there's nothing left to do. Share it. Sometimes, a conversation, advice, a video like this can change someone's life. Today, at 84, I feel more alive than a decade ago. Not because time has stopped, but because I decided to stop giving up. I decided to believe again in myself, in my body, in the wisdom we inherited from our grandparents. They didn't have expensive supplements or modern treatments, but they knew how to nourish themselves, how to heal, how to age with dignity. So if you're listening to this, I want to leave you with a question. Are you willing to try? To give your body one more chance? Because pain doesn't have to be your lifelong companion. Because there are still paths to walk, dances to dance, hugs to give, and your body deserves to accompany you in all of that. Thank you for being here, for listening to my story, for allowing yourself this moment of reflection. And now I invite you to participate. Do you also suffer from knee or joint pain? Do you know someone who could benefit from this? Leave me your story in the comments, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet, and share this video with that person who needs to walk without pain again. See you in the next video.